A boy hurts his knee sledding. His mother dresses them both in ragged clothes and walks him to a free clinic for the poor. The doctor recognizes her. He knows exactly who she is, and he refuses to treat the boy for free because the woman standing in front of him is one of the richest people in the United States. She takes her son home and treats the leg herself. The knee gets worse over the following years. Eventually, the leg is amputated. Her name was Hetty Green. When she died in 1916, estimates of her fortune ran somewhere between $1 and $200 million, an amount that made her, by most accounts, the richest woman in America and possibly the world. She had built a great deal of it herself, in an era when women were not permitted to do that. She also would not pay for hot water. She wore the same black dress until it wore out. Later in life, she developed a hernia and refused the operation, choosing instead to press the swelling down with a stick. 5 episodes now, this channel has been asking what separates the people who keep money from the people who lose it. Hetty Green kept all of it. Every dollar. And that is the reason she's here. Because at some point, keeping stops being the skill and becomes the symptom. And almost nobody can tell you where that line is. One thing first, because it changes how you should hear everything else. A lot of what you'll read about Hetty Green isn't reliable. Newspapers of the 1890s were not in the accuracy business, and she was one of their favorite subjects, the woman in black who beat men at their own game. They gave her the nickname the Witch of Wall Street. They wrote that she ate cold oatmeal warmed on an office radiator, that she wore undergarments until they disintegrated, that her final stroke came during an argument with a maid about the price of skimmed milk. Some of that may be true. Much of it is the Gilded Age equivalent of a viral post, and it's worth noticing what kind of person got that treatment. J.P. Morgan cornered markets and was called a titan. Hetty Green carried her lunch in her pocket and was called a witch. The contempt in that coverage has an obvious source, and it isn't frugality. So set the tabloid material aside. What's left is still remarkable, and it's better documented. The free clinic, the refused surgery, the plain clothing, the fortune that just kept growing. Those are the facts this episode is about. She started reading financial papers aloud to her grandfather at 6 years old. By 8, she had opened a bank account with saved coins. That detail matters more than the anecdotes. She wasn't taught money as a subject. She absorbed it as a native language, in a whaling family, in a house where the ledgers were read out loud like scripture. And she was a girl in the 1840s, which meant the whole apparatus of the world was built to make sure she'd never control any of it. She spent her early adulthood in litigation over family inheritance, long, ugly fights over what was hers. Then she went out and multiplied it. She bought when everyone else was panicking. She lent money to cities and railroads and men who had laughed at her. During the Panic of 1907, when the banks would not lend, she lent New York City its own rescue. That's the part the greatest miser label buries. She was an extraordinarily good investor, decades before anyone had a name for what she was doing. She once said there was no great secret to making a fortune. She also said a girl should be raised to make her own living, whether or not she stood to inherit one. Hold that alongside the free clinic. Both are the same woman in the same week. Here's the reading that makes the whole life coherent, and it's not "she loved money." Think about what money did for her specifically. Every dollar in her control was a dollar that no husband, no court, no cousin, no board of men could take. Her entire early adulthood had been a fight to hold on to what was hers against people with the law on their side. So the pile wasn't a scoreboard, and it wasn't a plan for a comfortable future. It was the wall. And once money becomes the wall, spending it isn't a purchase anymore. It's a hole in the defenses. Hot water is a hole. A doctor's fee is a hole. That's why the ratios stop making sense from the outside. She wasn't weighing a doctor's bill against $100 million. She was weighing it against the feeling of being unprotected, and that feeling never gets cheaper no matter how large the pile grows. We looked at the opposite of this 2 episodes ago. Ronald Reed, the janitor with $8 million, also lived on almost nothing. Same visible behavior, entirely different engine underneath. Reed appeared to be at peace with his life, and he directed millions to a hospital and a library. Hetty Green wouldn't buy her own operation, which is the uncomfortable part of frugality as a virtue. From the outside, the peaceful version and the frightened version look identical. Both are a person in old clothes not spending money. You cannot tell them apart by watching. And this is the harder bit, you often can't tell them apart from the inside either, because fear is very good at describing itself as discipline. Now the ledger nobody keeps. Her son's leg. That's the one everyone repeats, and it deserves to be repeated. Though the full story is more tangled than the legend. Her husband ultimately paid for the surgery and the prosthetic. The boy grew up. He also grew up knowing precisely what the calculation had been. Her own hernia, untreated for years, managed with a stick, and then the part that reads like the universe making a point. She spent a lifetime accumulating a fortune she would not touch, and when she died, her 2 children split it, and by every account they enjoyed that money considerably more than she ever had. The wall she'd spent 81 years building was dismantled and spent by people who had never needed one. That's the outcome, and it's worth sitting with, because there's a version of this video that ends by calling her a cautionary tale and telling you to enjoy your money. That version would be too easy, and this channel doesn't do easy. Hetty Green died rich, independent, and unbeaten by an era that was designed to beat her. She may well have considered that a life well spent. We don't get to grade someone else's ledger. We only get to notice that a ledger existed and that it had costs on it as well as gains. The reason this matters at any income is that the wall shows up long before the fortune does. It's the person who has 3 years of expenses saved and still cannot book the flight. The one who declines the dinner, skips the dentist, keeps the car with the noise. Not because the money isn't there. It's there, it's visible in the app, but because moving any of it out feels like taking a brick off the top. And here's the trap in that. All of those behaviors are indistinguishable from good financial hygiene. They earn compliments. Nobody stages an intervention for someone who saves too much. The feedback loop that would tell you you've gone too far simply doesn't exist, which is why this failure mode can run for 60 years without correction. The only test I know of is a question, and it's uncomfortable. What number would be enough? If the honest answer is that no number would be, that a bigger pile would make you feel exactly as unsafe as you feel now, then the pile was never the point, and getting more of it won't fix what it's being asked to fix. Go back to the clinic doorway. A woman in deliberately ragged clothes, holding her son's hand, being recognized by a doctor who knows she could buy the building. She could have paid. She had more money than nearly anyone alive. And whatever was operating in her at that moment, it was stronger than the arithmetic, stronger than the doctor's disgust, stronger than the sight of her own child's knee. That's what this whole series keeps arriving at from different directions. 300 million lost. A janitor's wage held for 60 years and given away at the end. The largest upside in business history declined out of caution that was justified. A jackpot that erased a competent man's life in 5 years. And now a fortune held so tightly that its owner wouldn't spend it on her own body. Not one of those was decided by the size of the number. They were decided by what the money was being asked to do. Prove something, protect something, buy freedom, buy safety, buy a wall. The number is never the thing. It's just what the thing gets measured in.